phone so you can just type in the answers. Oh, Claire's managed to record it. That's very clever. Well done, Claire. So you're going to need something you can just write. So I'm going to pose you two questions. You'll see a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is no, absolutely not. It's not working for me. And 10 is, yeah, absolutely cooking on gas. And then the numbers in between are something in between. Okay, so let me show you these two questions. And I want you to just read the question and gut reaction, write down the number that corresponds to your sense of this. So I need to share my screen. Share my screen. Oh, it's not showing me the right screen now. Why is it not doing that? Ooh. Okay. Right, that's thrown me. I'm now on two screens and it worked earlier. So why is it not working now? Share. Hopefully now you can see my screen. Can you see my screen? Yeah. Yes. Hey, fantastic. All right. So let's move to this very first question. Quiz questions are on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is not at all and 10 is extremely. Question 1. Overall, how satisfied are you with life as a whole these days? Pick a number. I'm not going to ask you what the number is. You don't have to show the number to anybody else. This is just for you. Question 2. Overall, to what extent do you feel the things you do in your life are worthwhile? We'll give that one a number. We're going to come back to this later, so you may want to do these numbers. Okay, all right, so moving on. All my life, I have utterly mystified my mother. She has never understood me, not from being little to the day we're currently in. To be fair to her, she's not the only person that I mystified. I started out in professional life having done a zoology degree. So I did animal behavior and evolutionary biology, and that's very much where I come from. And when I qualified, I decided that I really needed to do something. I didn't want to do a piece of research. I didn't want to go into life insurance sales, which a lot of the people I was studying with did. I wanted to be actually able to use it. So I went out to West Africa and I spent 2 years reintroducing chimpanzees to the wild. And my mother and other people went, why? Why are you doing that? Why are you going to go and live in a mud hut in the middle of a jungle? No telephone. I mean, this is the mid-1980s, so there was nothing. There was no mobile phones, no nothing at all for communicating with the outside world. And everybody was mystified. But to me, it felt like the only thing that somebody like me could do. I couldn't see, having studied what I'd studied and come to understand what I understood about the nature of the world, that I would do anything else. Why would I do anything else? This was a values clash, if you like, between me and other folk that I knew. So I stayed in conservation for a long while, came back to the UK, got involved with the local wildlife trust, and then I moved to the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust, and I did various things with them for a number of years, and eventually came out of that and went into more mainstream voluntary and community sector, worked with Sefton CVS. I was skills development director there, running long-term unemployed programs under New Deal. Don't know if anybody's old enough to remember the New Deals when we had real money to spend on young people. Did that until, as Heath says, in 2004 when I went freelance. And I went freelance because I wanted to be able to do something a bit more unique. So rather than work on mainstream things, I wanted to do something that was slightly at the edges, and that's what brought me into the field of values. So values is where I've been specializing since 2005, and I am literally tomorrow about to complete my PhD. So I have spent the last 3.5 years researching this area myself independently. Big thing to understand about values, alongside the fact that everybody's got them, is that they are closely interwoven with sense of self. Values are intimately related with our sense of identity. And this goes for organizations as well. When people come together in groups, which is all that an organization is, it's just a group of people doing something together. When people come together in groups, we socialize to a set of values that mean something to all of us. We each come in with our own individual, unique hierarchy of values, but we then socialize to a shared set of values. And values within an organization are closely interwoven with identity, which is why you'll often find inside organizations they work on values alongside brand, or they work on values alongside employee proposition, or whatever it happens to be. Very closely interwoven with identity. Big part of who we are. Another thing to understand about values is that they are unconscious. They sit in our limbic circuitry. So this is a deep, ancient structure within the brain. This is wiring that comes from kind of 200,000 years ago, something like that. It's been around a long time in our heads, this operating system, and nobody's sending us an update anytime soon. Okay, we don't get to rewrite this operating system. It just is the one that we have, and it's in the limbic circuitry where there is no vocabulary. It's interesting that values sit in us at a level underneath language. What that means is that values are things that we feel. They are not things that we think. Values live in the land of affect. They are about what we are drawn towards and what we are repelled by, but it's visceral, it's a feeling, it's here. When people talk about their values, they will frequently put their hand on their heart as they do it, and they won't even realize that they've done it. So it is about the difference between what makes your heart sing and what makes your heart sink. This is where I'm going to give you something to do. We all have something that makes us do what we do. There's an invisible engine of energy, and that engine runs on fuel, and the fuel is our values. So we've each got our own personal motivations for doing what we do and for being here today. Everybody in the room has theirs, you have yours. I would like you to please just take 2 minutes for me. And again, you ideally piece of paper, but you can do it in your head if you really want to do it in your head. Just spend 2 minutes, and I will time it on my desktop because I can't find my mobile. What is it that matters to you? Think about the work you do. The fact you've chosen to do this work, not other work, because you're all bright, talented people. I know this, Heath has told me this. You could do other things in other places, but you don't. You do this, and you do it here, and you have reasons for that. There is something that draws you to this. What is that? What is it that matters to you about what you do? So I'm not asking you to describe your job. I'm asking you, what is it that matters? And then in 2 minutes' time, we'll see if anybody's willing to share anything. But just take 2 minutes. Ideally, scribble it down. It's really well worth scribbling it down. What matters to me is thinking about the work. What is it that matters to you? My clock says 12:13, so at 12:15, I shall find out what you've said, hopefully. And don't be surprised if you're partly sitting there thinking, well, it just does. It just matters. Because the what matters about it is deep down inside your brains. It's not sitting at a level of vocabulary, but just this is where writing's really good. It kind of comes out towards the ends of the sentences. All right, okay. So, anybody willing to share anything that they came up with in terms of what matters? Feel free to unmute yourselves, put your hand up.
Hello.
Hi.
So I think mine was to have a positive, I can't remember it now, positive impact on people that I encounter. But a couple of people in the room were similar. So have a positive, and what was it?
Make a positive difference to people and places.
And then Samaya.
To bring the best out in people.
Lovely.
That was us in the room there, I think.
Excellent. Anybody, anything else? No, that's fine. Okay, we'll go on.
Jamie's, sorry.
Yeah.
Jamie's posted in the chat because he normally has microphone issues, so it's probably why he's not come to the mic. But what matters to me is becoming a better version of myself this week than I was last week, and that.
Fantastic. That's great. Excellent. So we've got some different things here. It might be about impact on or with people from the work. It might be enabling about the best out of other people, so being facilitative in that kind of way. Or it may be self-developmental, kind of self-actualization. What is, I got here, where else can I go? What else can I do? All hugely valid motivations for the work that you do. And this is the thing, everybody's got something a bit special and a bit nuanced to them. But then when you look at those as a little group of things, they're all about what's possible. They're all developmental values. They're all values that are reluctant to accept that what we've seen is the best that we're capable of. There is more that can be done. So this is another thing about values, is there's lots of individual values. Research argues frequently about how many there are exactly and how they're all arranged. But what research does agree about is that values are hierarchical, which means that one sits above another, sits above another, sits above another. Because you can't have a whole bunch of values as equally important in the moment. It doesn't work like that. This is ancient wiring. It's sequential. It's kind of logic, binary based. It's this, then that, this, then that. That's a nice one, Linda, about actually making sure that the connections we have with other people are generative. That's great. Yeah, that's an excellent example of a value. Values are not the same thing as beliefs, morals, ethics, standards, or principles. I'm just going to park that there because that's a whole other conversation, but they're not the same as that. Values, social justice. Yes, that one comes up a lot. Thank you very much for that one. What values are, this is my favorite academic definition of it all. Ideals that give meaning to our lives and are reflected through the practices we choose and that we act on consistently and repeatedly. And that's why thinking about what matters in the work is one route into starting to get a deeper connection with our own personal values. Because for something to matter, it has to have worth. And if it has worth, it is of value. So we all have values, whether we know it or not, because actually usually they sit in the unconscious. We all have a unique pattern of personal values, but we can socialize to shared values, values that are shared within a team, values that are shared within a field of work. That's what actually attracts us. But it's the acting on it that makes a difference. If you have something that you claim is a value, for example, I read a lot about organizational values, and lots of organizations, as you may well be aware, publish lists of values. You know, they stick them up on posters in reception, or they form the inside cover of the annual report or something like that. And there's this list of words which sound absolutely fantastic. And they can generally contain words like respect and collaboration. That's another one you see as well as a value. It's only a value if it's put into practice. Because if it's not practiced, it's not a value. It's a wish or a whim or a fad or a fancy, but it's certainly not a value. Because as Brian Hall says, it is those ideals upon which we act. That's what suddenly turns something into a value rather than being anything else. Now, there's a connection between values and beliefs, but also what we do, our behavior, action and attitude. I'm going to give you a little story to illustrate this one. So values and beliefs are both sitting in our unconscious. Our beliefs are our truths about the world. They are our mental model of the world. And based on our mental model of the world, some things matter more than other things. And this interaction between values and beliefs prompts us to do things and do it in certain ways. The value is really important because it creates the tone and feel of what goes on. So if you give example, my brother-in-law is a journalist, and he does quite a lot of travel and goes and interviews fancy people in fancy places. And he reliably informs me, because it's not within my personal experience, that a 5-star hotel reception is a fantastic place to be. I have to take his word for it because I've never been in one, but he says, you know, you walk in and everything's beautiful and you're welcomed and nothing is too much trouble, and you always go where you are expected to go, and it's just a beautiful, seamless, joyful experience. It's lovely. My experience of reception is more like my dentist surgery, where I walk in through the door and the receptionist looks up and says, "You're late." Now, in her defense, she's usually right. But you could say that actually what's been done is exactly the same. A person has entered a building, they have gone to reception, and they've been sent to the room that they need to be in. It's the same work. How it's done is completely different, and how it's done is infused by the values. And then that interacts with beliefs. And in that interaction, we do this sense making. So Brian Hall talks about values as a source of meaning. It's October now, so I think it's okay to tell a pre-Christmas story. My eldest, Hannah, and I came downstairs on Christmas Day in our house a number of years ago now. And she was 8 at the time. And our house was on the market, and we rolled up the kitchen blinds and we looked out through the window, and our sailboard was smashed up on our drive, just like lying on the drive in pieces. We both gasped. I thought to myself, somebody clearly thought that was funny, because our house was on the street that led from the pub down into the main village. So yeah, I thought that's what's happened there. Hannah, meanwhile, looked out the window and she went, "Oh, he must have been going so fast." And I went, "Yes." "Who?" She said, "Santa." So we went outside and we looked at the driveway, And Hannah showed me where the sleigh had skidded to a halt in the road, having hit our for sale sign. And then we went back inside and she was chirpy as anything. And she was, yes, mummy, see, and people don't believe, and I believe, and Santa, you know, because anyway, I've got a pink dressing gown and you don't believe in gender stereotyping. And I'm thinking, you're right. Yes, no, your father bought you that dressing gown. It wasn't me. For her world, where she is highly certain that Father Christmas will come, if you believe and you have been good, there was no other explanation for that information. That thing she saw in the world, that is what it meant. And because it meant that, it then lifted her mood and she had a great Christmas day and all of the rest of it. So we look at the world through the lens of our values. We have a mental model of the world, which is our belief system, and then things that matter. And then we look through that at the world and we decide what is like us and what is not like us. So they're very, very powerful forces. They sit in the unconscious. That is where they do their job. Because one of the things about being a human is that we live in a complex world with a lot of moving parts. We are a long-lived animal and we're social, which means we have a lot of complexity to deal with. So we need an autopilot. We need a way of getting through the usual stuff without having to think about how we're doing the usual stuff. Because if we had to think about everything, we would never get anything done. So our values are in the unconscious, running like a script. They give us a sense of self. They rule some things in and some things out because they are like us or not like us as an individual, the individual we see ourselves as. And then we can deal with the unknowns and the complexities and the unexpecteds. But they're doing this really powerful meaning-making thing. And this is where it's really useful to understand your own values, because it gives you an insight into why this feels like that, or that feels like that, why this makes my heart sing, why that makes my heart sink. And the more insight we have into that, the better able we are to self-regulate and to actually design things in the way that we want them. So this is an alignment story, because a lot of what we talk about at an organizational level is people wanting to recruit people, wanting to organize initiatives that align with the values of other people. So aligning values is not a game of snap. It's not some kind of like, I have a respect value. Do you have a matching respect value? Oh, we can be friends, or oh, we can't be friends. It's not that, because it doesn't work like that. It's about alignment. This house that we lived in, where we put the house up for sale, across the road from us was a lady called Mrs. Adams. Mrs. Adams was in her mid-80s, and this was years ago now, because this was the Silver Jubilee, I think, or the Golden Jubilee, I don't know. It was one or the other. It was a Jubilee anyway for the late Queen. And Mrs. Adams was an out-and-out royalist, completely and utterly. There was just Union flags everywhere all the time. It's not really me. That's not in my values hierarchy. And I knew she had thoughts and plans and schemes connected with the Jubilee, and I really didn't want to be roped in. I really, really, really didn't, because it just would have felt so inauthentic to me. And I saw her come out of her bungalow across the road and cross the road and start to come up our drive. And I looked away from the kitchen window, and Victoria, my youngest, looked at me and she went, "Mummy, you're thinking about hiding underneath the table again." And I went, "Yes, I know. I won't. I will go and open the door." So I go to open the door to Mrs. Adams, rehearsing all my arguments about how terribly busy I am and how terribly sorry I am, but I can't possibly get involved. Oh, no, 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 it's not me, it's not me. Open the door, and she says, "Jackie, I just wonder if you could help me with one thing for a street party." And I'm going, well, about to say that I'm terribly busy in it. And she said, because it's such a long time since I've had little ones to cater for She says, I don't really know what the children like to eat and drink anymore. And I know that we're not supposed to feed them E numbers, or is it D numbers or P numbers? And I go, no, we try not to feed children anything that's got a number. And she went, no. So I wondered if you could have a chat with the other carers and parents around the street, and just let me know what sort of things we should get so the children can have a good time. Now she's got me, because I've got a high priority family belonging value, and I have a high priority community support value. She's joining in with others around things that matter to me. Between those two, it now is irrelevant that this street party is somehow connected with tradition and loyalty and all of that, because now the street party is about cohesiveness for me. And now I can get involved because that aligns with my values. It's not a match, it's a harmony. And the beautiful thing about establishing those kinds of harmonies, whether it's within teams, inside organizations, across partnerships and multi-agency settings, or whether it's joining with communities to support them in having more of what matters to them present in their localities, is that this harmony of values recognizes and appreciates the diversity of values that people bring, but finds a common ground where we can actually all join together as unique and authentic individuals, but to do something collective. And that's where it has real power. Here's a little activity for you. Some people have probably done this already. Fold your arms. So just fold your arms for me, please. This doesn't involve a piece of paper or a pen or anything else. Just fold your arms. Now, fold them the other way. Fold them the way you would not normally fold them. It's quite often somebody's going, I now can't even remember how I folded my arms to start with. She's got me so confused. But you can fold them the wrong way. I'm not going to leave you sitting there with your arms folded the wrong way. Please relax. The point is, you've got your own way of doing it, which is really automatic, really comfortable. You can sit like that for ages and you'd be absolutely fine. You can also do it the wrong way, because you are a human being. Being a human being means that you have a plastic brain and you are wired to connect. So if you are feeling cooperative towards somebody or something, you can short-term, temporarily, literally bend yourself out of shape in order to satisfy the situation that is being put in front of you. But it's not very good for you in the long term. It is much better for us as humans to find ways of doing what needs to be done, but that aligns with our values rather than conflicts with our values. Organizations get very excited about their shared core values and think that if they've got a bunch of values, that's the culture problem sorted. Now it's all going to be fine because everybody will just line up with this. And all of the research says it doesn't work like that. It's useful to have a set of genuinely shared values inside an organization, but the real route to loyalty, to commitment, to performance, to all of those sorts of things is alignment through personal values. It is your individual values that matter more than any values that the organization happens to have stuck on the wall. And values are often introduced into organizations with a view to trying to shift culture. Say, oh, well, it always used to be like this, and it's not, it's for now, this is not great. We want to shift to here, so we're going to have a new set of values. That'll make it happen. No, it won't. Because until the values are actually lived, put into practice, they're not real values. And everybody inside an organization, very sensibly, whether they realize they do it or not, looks to the leadership and says, what are they doing? And culture is more often defined by the worst behaviors that leaders indulge in than it is by anything that's been written down anywhere in a handbook or anywhere else. So it's really important to understand that it is your values that make the difference in how you do your work, and it is your values, through your own personal values, that you connect to your organisation and to the other people around you. So, really quick gallop now through why values matter. They matter because they're closely related to identity, sense of self. They influence what we notice. I was asked to do a values profile with a guy who just got a new job. I was doing some work with a hospital in Dorset, and this guy had just been appointed as ward manager, and the team were absolutely thrilled to have him join because they just thought he was the best thing ever, and he was really thrilled to have joined them. And so I was asked to do a values session with him as part of his induction. So looked at his values profile, talked to him about it, said, how's it all going? And he went, oh, it's fantastic. I'm loving this. This place is just amazing. It's just, and these people are great, and those people are great, and the wards like this, and the opportunities to do something to really help the patients like this, and it's just so exciting. And even the consultant came and said hello to me. I mean, and that's unheard of. So this is really brilliant. And I go, whoa, fantastic. Go you. This is very exciting. I said, yeah. So then his line manager said, okay, so Jackie, can you do a check-in with him on his values at the end of the first month? Because we want to just be as welcoming and as accommodating of his values as we possibly can. That matters. I said, okay. So I checked in with him at the end of the month, and I said, so how's it going? And he said, yeah, it's all right. And I went, oh, it's all right. He said, yeah, it's all right. I said, what's wrong? He went, nothing, it's all right. I went, okay, well, that's a big change in 4 weeks. What's up? And he went, wow, the team's great. I said, excellent. The ward's lovely, excellent. Doing lots of good things for the patients, fantastic. What's not great? And he went, wow. He said, you know that consultant I mentioned? And I said, yeah. He said, wow. And this guy has a really high priority value around social affirmation, which is a really sensible value because it's one that keeps you noticing feedback, whether it's formal or informal. So it affirms whether or not you're kind of treading a path that enables people to connect with you, and that those connections are mutually respectful and all of that sort of thing. So it's a great value. It makes a lot of sense. He also has a really high priority empathy value, which won't surprise you, saying that he's a senior nurse and managing the ward. And he said to me, he said, yes, well, he said, that consultant this week, I was walking down the corridor, he's walking the other way, and I said, good morning, Mr. And he completely blanked me. Didn't react at all, blanked me. And I thought, there you go. It's just like all the rest. Huh. And I went, right, okay. I said, so can I just ask a couple of questions about this? And he went, well, if you want. I said, okay, so was he carrying anything? Did he, like, I don't know, like have an arm full of files, or was he busy? Was he going somewhere? No, not that I saw. Right, okay. Did he have anything in his hands at all, or was he just like, sauntering on down the corridor, happy as Larry? And he went, well, no, he had his phone. I said, oh, okay. Was he looking at his phone? Yeah, he was looking at his phone. I said, so he may not have seen you. Well, maybe not, but I spoke, I said, good morning, Mr. So-and-so, and he didn't look up or anything, just completely blanked me. I went, okay. I said, so you don't know what was on his phone? He said, what do you mean? I said, you don't know if he's just come out of a meeting because he's had a text from his partner saying, oh my God, there's water pouring out of the ceiling and I don't know where the stopcock is. And he went, well, no. I said, you don't know if he's just had an email from the radiographers saying, how we told Mrs. X she was in remission. I've just looked at the latest scan and I'm not sure that's right. Do you want to tell her or shall I? And he went, well, no. I said, so you don't know? You don't know what's happening in his world and coming at him through his phone? He went, oh, no. And he went, oh. do I have to talk to you for very much longer? Because I'd really like to go and check in with him and make sure he's okay. Okay, no, you don't have to talk to me. You go check in, see if he's okay. The point being that our values, when they are activated, when something happens in the world that either lights them up and makes them go, yes, this is fantastic, I love it, or whether it actually needles them, it prods them and it kind of goes, oh, this is not good, I am not happy about this. We will make meaning, we will interpret what's happening in front of us through the lens of our values. And sometimes they get it wrong. Sometimes somebody did not intend to cause offence. Sometimes somebody did not ride roughshod over our ideas. It's just the way we heard it. Sometimes we had an opportunity to do something, but we didn't recognise it because we didn't expect it to be there. So having a handle on your values actually helps you take the reins in how you make sense of what's going on around you, and you realize what you're noticing and therefore what you may be not noticing. So that's really powerful from a self-regulation point of view. They are this scaffolding for sense making.
Sorry guys, I think we've got a connection issue, I believe, at Jackie's end.
Oh, yeah, no,
Oh,
looks
you're
like
back.
it's come back. All right, okay. So values are a framework for decision making. They lie behind the big decisions. So you may have experienced situations where folk go to you, so what do you want to do? Do you want to do this or do you want to do that? And you're there in your head kind of going, I don't want to do either of those things. I want to do something else. And they go, well, why do you want to do something else? And you go, because I just do. It's because neither of the options in front of you actually honor your values, and so you're pulled in another direction. When you've got a language for that, it makes it much easier to have the conversation. Finally, values buffer you from stress. Really good studies have shown that conscious connection with values actually prevents our bodies from producing cortisol. So we are physiologically protected from the downsides of stress if we've got a conscious value space for the way that we're actually approaching things. So yeah, they're all a bit brilliant, actually, values, if you can get a handle on them. But with them being in the unconscious, that is a little bit tricky. I would like you to have a go at this question again for me, if you would. So this is the same question as you saw at the top of the session. So question 1, overall, how satisfied are you with life as a whole these days? Pick a number from 0 to 10 without looking at what you wrote the first time. And then question 2, overall, to what extent do you feel the things you do in your life are worthwhile? Pick a number from 0 to 10 for that one. And then when you've done that, you can compare them with the numbers that you had the first time around. Now, the reason, while you're looking at those, let me just tell you where those items come from. Those 2 items are really well-tested questions for assessing well-being. So well-being, broadly speaking, has 2 aspects to it. One is hedonic. That's the life satisfaction thing. That's about pleasure and feeling comfort and joy and all of those sorts of things. The second is what's called eudemic well-being, and this is about meaning and purpose. And they're 2 very different psychological constructs, and those 2 questions look at those 2 things. Values have an impact on how we feel about each of those things. And one of the things that research shows is that a stronger connection with personal values and the benefits that that brings actually has a measurable positive impact on life satisfaction and life worthwhile. I don't know if anybody wants to say what happened with their numbers at all. They may have stayed the same, they may have gone up, they may have gone down. Anything could have happened. If you want to say what happened with your numbers, you can either speak up or put it in the chat. Either way is absolutely fine. The thing is that that worthwhile piece, that's where values can have a really big impact. We can do something really difficult, but if it's meaningful, we don't need to have had a good time. If it was meaningful, if it's the sort of thing that somebody like me just does do, and will try and do to the best of their ability, even if it's difficult, even if it might not work, even if it might make me unpopular, even if nobody else thinks it's worthwhile, I think it's worthwhile and I'm going to do it. That experience of meaning in life is really, really powerful. So powerful, in fact, that actually having a sense of strong meaning in life, as expressed through your values, actually reduces the activation of inflammatory markers in the body's immune system. So actually, values connection and a stronger sense of worthwhile, life being worthwhile, increases the strength of your immune system, which is another kind of interesting thing. So for me, the fact that values are a psychological construct, they are ideas, they are abstracts about what matters most. The fact that when we actually bring them into our lives and we make them concrete, and we can hold on to them and really live them, then actually improves the functioning of our bodies, is a very, very exciting area, I think, particularly for the kind of program that you guys are all involved with. Understanding that is a helpful thing. But values are not a rule book. Your personal values are not a straitjacket. They don't say you can and only will live life like this. Your values are a navigation system. They are the way you look forward into uncertainty and ambiguity and figure out what it means to someone like you and how someone like you goes forward from this point. I am going to leave it there so that we can take questions. People can share what they found with their numbers if they wish to, and I can explain anything that didn't make sense as we were going along. Any questions, any comments? Opening it up to the floor.
Jackie, whilst we wait to see if anyone has got any comments, are you all right to just pop your details for your website into the chat, just so people
I can do that.
can follow that up if they want to read any more?
Let me just make that on the big screen. Okay, so the website. And if you want to, I am just Jackie Lefebvre on LinkedIn, so do find me if you wish.
Brilliant. Any questions? Rachel, are you poised to ask a question there?
Oh yeah, sorry, I was just typing it in the chat, but you can see my big head, so I'll talk instead. So from us, we were just wondering, Jackie, have your values changed since you've been on this journey from zoologist to your current
Absolutely.
status? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a really good question, actually, because for a long time, psychologists maintained that your values are your values and you're stuck with them. But it doesn't work like that. Values are actually dynamic to context, and we live and we learn. Because one of the things you find is the longer lived an animal is, the greater the importance that learning has. So human beings are long-lived animals. We're also social. So learning matters for social animals because you're in a group and you can't make the other individuals of the group do what you want them to do, which means you have to be able to handle whatever it is that they decide to do. So you've got a lot of complexity. So you're going to live for a long time, which means the environment is going to change around you, and you're in a group, which means it's got a lot of moving parts. So you've got to be thinking about a lot of different things all at the same time. And what we do is we change as we learn. Values can be stable for periods of time, but one of the studies that I really like looked at values stability and values change, and there were two groups of people that they discovered that values changed in really dramatically. The first group of people that they studied were new army recruits, and they did values profiling with them at the start of basic training, and then they did values profiling with them when they returned from their first active tour of duty. And when they first did their values profile, you know, like loyalty, duty, yes, absolutely, territory, security, patriotism, yeah, that was there. When they came back from their first tour of duty, these now seasoned soldiers went, oh, you learn it when you're out there. That's when you realize what truly having one another's backs means. That's when you learn why you can't just think that one thing is right. It's more complicated than that. So they saw a really big shift in these values amongst soldiers before they'd been on to active duty and after they'd been on active duty. And interestingly, the other group who showed a massive shift in their values were first-time parents. So values profiled in the early months of pregnancy, the couples kind of went, oh, it's going to be like this, and it's going to be beautiful, and baby's going to be like this, and we're going to be like this, and it's going to be a joy. And then baby arrives, and they did their values profile 6 months later, and people were going, so tired. Cannot believe how tired I am. Now that I am this tired, I just really like a cup of tea sometimes that I can drink all the way to the bottom of the mug. So there's people smiling. People have been parents or been around parents. Yes, we know this. So massive shift. And it's because of the shift in identity. So young soldiers think they know what a soldier is and what kind of a soldier they are going to be. And then they go through the experience of becoming that and they go, oh, it's not quite exactly what I thought. Same with parents. Other kinds of life transitions, which can cause a reordering, if you like, of values, are starting a brand new job, because we know ourselves up until the point that we start this new job. We think we know who we were going to be and how we're going to be in the new job, but then we meet new people and we do new things and we go, oh, it's not quite like what I thought it was. So you can get a shift at that point. The other thing, which we've all been through, is that the research shows that COVID caused a very significant shift in values, both in individuals and societies as a whole. So we're actually living at a time when we weren't expecting to have learned what we've learned, been through what we've been through, and be trying to adjust. So yeah, values, very dynamic. Mine have changed, and there's two ways of changing them. Your values can change as a consequence of what's happened around you and your sense of where you stand, or you can change them intentionally. Because the unconscious doesn't know the difference between the truth and a lie, the unconscious just basically takes its instructions from whatever you think. If there is something that is a powerful value in your framework and it is not helping, like my ward manager, the priority he placed on his social affirmation value was really prompting him to be unhappy about things that he did not need to be unhappy about, because there was another way of looking at it. You can change your values intentionally. So you can say, this value here did a good job once upon a time, not serving me in the here and now. I'm gonna archive it. And you can literally park up things that were useful once, but are no longer relevant. And that's one of the ways in which our values can be problematic, because they're in the unconscious and they're running on a script. If we don't decide to change it, we will keep doing things that don't bring us our best outcomes, because it's what we've always done. So there's another kind of feature of this idea of bringing conscious attention to it. I think somebody just put a question in the chat box, didn't they? So we've got
Jim's got a question in there.
Yes, absolutely. There are big studies on retirement, and one of the things that's interesting about the retirement studies is that they found that men and women go into retirement with very similar patterns of values, but then live them out differently. So, and it probably won't surprise you to know that the studies that I've read so far say that it is men who struggle more in moving into retirement. Classically, maybe not so much now, I hope not so much now, but classically, professional identity was such a big part of who people described themselves as. When professional identity is no longer active, it can be a struggle to craft another identity. My dad's no longer with us, but I saw this with my dad. You know, people would go, "Oh, hello, John. So what do you do?" And he would open with, "I was a production manager." It would be the first thing that came out of his mouth that defined him as a person. So yeah, it is more difficult, but it is not, Jamie, impossible. People can shift once if they want to. Some people are so attached to that previous professional identity they don't want to let it go, even when it's not current anymore. But with conscious attention, people can literally reinvent themselves for a new stage in their lives, and then be actually even happier, have even higher scores on that life is worthwhile than they did have when they were younger. Beth.
Hiya, we're just wondering how you identify your values. You talked then just about profiling. Is that the way of going about it, or is there any exercise that you can do?
There are various ways of doing it. There's a lot of different tools out there. Be a little bit wary of Google, because the things that Google thinks are values tools mostly aren't. They're mostly personality instruments, and that's something else. So at a really, really simple level, you can just sit with a pen and a piece of paper and write a list. What makes my heart sing and what makes my heart sink? The compare and contrast between those is going to give you some really good signals. And you need to sort of keep going with it. Don't stop at the surface level. So when I say family belonging is an important value to me, I can't, that's not actionable. What I need to understand is what that means to me. To me, the value of family and belonging is about me deliberately devoting resources that I have to support those that I consider to be my family. So for me, family is not about belonging to a set of folk who share blood or a name or anything else. For me, family is about that being in service of the folk who are closest to my heart. That's what the family value is about for me. And it will be about something else for somebody else. So don't stop at the first level, because another thing that folk will be really tempted to write down is, I value integrity. I mean, what the dickens does that even mean? Organisations use it left, right and centre, and they don't know what it means. So you always need to go below the level of the word and go, so in practice, what is it that's going on? So that's one way. What makes my heart sing? What makes it sink? You can do it that way. Another way to do it is to ask one or two people that you trust and who you feel know you well, and say to them, when do I really light up? When do you get a sense that I am absolutely in the zone of doing things I love with people I love? How would you describe that? Because sometimes other people are better at seeing our values in practice than we are able to see them ourselves. And so in my setting here, what people will say to me is partly people will say, Jackie, you're horribly antisocial, you never want to go to parties, which is true because I don't like parties. But anything involving my family, I will go to and I will love it. And it's more about me being there with and for them than it is about anything else to do with it all. And so that is feedback that somebody watching me would give me, that actually the interactions that are most meaningful for me are often those with my family, and that would point me at the family belonging value. And there are inventory tools, and if you want to, there is an inventory tool that you can get to through my website. It's based on the Monescence Values Framework, and you can click on the link and you can have a go at it. It costs nothing to work through, but if you then decide you wanted to buy a profile report, they start at £30. But you can have a play with the tool for nothing. That's just to see what you think of it. Another thing that people recommend is diaries, because a lot of values studies use diary techniques. So if you were to keep, and in positive psychology, one of the really helpful exercises is a gratitude journal. So if you adapt that slightly, and if you wrote down at the end of every day or at the end of most days, 3 things that really mattered to me today were, and if you wrote down 3 things that really mattered, and then you looked back over the course of a month, you would see themes in what matters, and that will point at what the values were. So Jamie. Yes.
Sorry, I was just pointing out. Can you actually hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, cool. I had an issue last time. Just as you were talking then, so I recently completed the 6-minute kind of gratitude journal. So as we started to talk about gratitude then, that was a really kind of nice thing to do each day. And then the next version of that was called the 6-minute success journal, which starts off with quite a lot about values in the introduction and how you can use that a little bit to form the basis of your daily entries, which also includes the gratitude. So I'm just testing it out now, but it's just a nice thing that's kind of brought together a few things you've just described.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The problem that we've got when we want to try and get our handle on our values is that they are unconscious abstracts. They sit in the limbic circuitry. There is no vocabulary. So when we try to think about them, we are constrained by the words that we know. We can only use the words that are already in our heads. So what tends to happen is what we end up with is a pale imitation of the actually emotionally rich and energy laden idea that is this engine of motivation. Also, because we're human beings and we are wired to connect, we are social, we are vulnerable to social desirability bias, which means that even when we're doing an exercise like this for ourselves, we get really tempted to write down a version of ourselves that we think is palatable to other people. So we get tempted to write down all the things we think we ought to value. So we ought to value respect, and we ought to value loyalty, and we ought to value efficiency, and we ought to value, and I don't argue that for many people, those are really important and potent values, but they're not important and potent to everybody. In fact, they're not even important and potent for most people. It's a much richer landscape than that. So it's about not stopping at the first thing you think of. It's about going underneath it and underneath it and underneath it and underneath it. There's a technique in communications called 5 whys. If you ask why 5 times, by the time you get to the 5th answer, you're getting actually into a kernel of something that's really significant for an individual. So to try going down by the layers. or sign up for things that Heath has got coming up later in the year.
Seamless segue, thank you. That's great. Any other final questions before we wrap it up? Nope. Right, fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Jackie. Really insightful. I'm sure everyone's found that really useful. Thank you everyone for turning up and logging in. Sorry for some slight technical difficulties, but I think we got there. Thanks to Claire for recording. So I'll share the recording with the group, and again, you can share that with your networks. That'd be great. Like Jackie said, continue to look at the website and see what we've got coming up. I think there's another event on an in-person event next week, and then 2 weeks after that, I think we're back online again. So yeah, we'll keep you posted. But thanks very much. Thanks for your time, and speak to you all soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.